Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 10th of Feb 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. Now, as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice, and you can get your answers evaluated for free. Only condition is that it has to be from the DNA and within the same week. So that is the condition. And yes, you have to write your answers in the pen and paper format, right? So simple, write it and send it as a PDF file on my WhatsApp and Telegram, and the link is in the description box below. Now today we have, actually I just wanted to share two odd questions, but I have multiple questions now from mains perspective. And it goes without saying is that all other topics are important for prelims. So we have one question with reference to fusion energy. So this is something unique. Then with reference to disaster management, again important, and it's quite frequently it is asked in the GS3 paper. Then we had an opinion on the privatization. So we had in the reference to the budget also mRNA vaccine and the CORD minister. So I'm sharing a past year question that was asked in 2020. Okay. Now one more thing I wanted to say. So, why we are doing this, apart from that contextual understanding thing and everything. The thing is that if you are doing this initiative, you will have a thorough preparation of your mains. You will have a preparation of your notes, right? You are writing it on a pen and paper. You can quickly revise it before the exam. And you are researching and developing, you are inculcating some thought process that will further help you with your prelims. So your quality of answers improves. At the same time, the fact finding thing that is required will also help you with your prelims. So as far as current affairs is concerned, this is sufficient. Yes, you can do something additional. You can refer to some initiative where some 5-6 questions on current affairs are asked. So there are a lot of free websites. So there you can practice. So that is one more thing that you can do, and beyond this all you need to do is refer to the NCERTs for your static component. So your entire preparation will be free of cost, to be honest. Okay, now coming to the front page, right? So just a brief overview. So first of all, we are going to have the start of the elections in the Uttar Pradesh. So very, very important elections. So let's see what happens with reference to the farmer protests that are taking place. Farmers are upset with the BJP government, right? So this is there. Let's see what happens. Prime Minister Modi is confident, and with reference to budget, the opposition says that the budget has not considered the concerns of the poor people. So they feel that no, tax benefits have not been provided, income tax slabs have not been raised. So they have certain concerns, and they believe that it is only benefiting the corporates. And likewise, the government has retorted that, see, we are bringing this design linked incentive scheme, PLI scheme, everything will ultimately lead to job creation, and that too in the formal sector, right? More than what the government has said, I have told you. Okay, now one more thing with reference to budget. I prepared a video on budget, and it was not so much about the discussion of the budget, but from there I have taken lot of cues as to how questions can be asked in the GS3. So that is very, very comprehensive video, and will last you with your entire preparation, 2 years or 3 years if it takes. So it will help you with that. Okay, now this is particularly important, and this is with reference to fusion energy. So for a question that can be asked in GS3 Science and Tech. So examine the prospects of nuclear fusion technology in providing near limitless clean energy. 250 words. Fine. So here you have to define the nuclear fusion technology. How is it better? Why should we consider this? We are looking at the conventional energy. We are looking at the renewable energy. Why should we focus our resources over here? What are the prospects? What is the feasibility? Is it unsafe? There are certain questions that you need to consider. Is it commercially viable? Where are we on that process? What are the initiatives that are being taken up? So all of this are to be discussed in your 250. In fact, when it says 250, it means you have to elaborate from multiple point of views. You have to break this up, basically. Okay, I think let me just cover the technology part, and then we'll come to what happened, right? So that again provides us with a lot of some good information for prelims, some of the initiatives that are there in the news. Right. So conventionally, nuclear energy is not new. It is not new, but our nuclear energy that we have, the nuclear power plants, like in India, we have multiple power plants. Kudankulam is very, very famous. So it is based on the fission technology. So we have two nuclear reactions, as you can see in the screen. So this is the nuclear fission and this one is the nuclear fusion. So we are just considering this one, nuclear fusion. We'll come to that later. So in this, what happens is we take an element, and to be more precisely, we take an isotope. Isotope is, within there is an element like uranium. So uranium has some atomic number and some mass number. So there is something that is available that is very, very available in the nature, and it is there in the stable form. But we have certain elements which has the same atomic number, but their mass number is different. I don't remember exact mass number. Right? For hydrogen, we have, for example, I can give you. So we have the atomic number 1, right? And we have different mass number. For example, we have an isotope of hydrogen known as deuterium, which is the mass number is 2. Normal hydrogen is H1 and 1. So that means it has 1 proton. The atomic number is basically the number of protons that are there. And mass number is, in the nucleus, there is proton plus neutrons. So here there is an additional neutron. There is 1 proton plus neutron. And then there is H1, 3. So these are unstable forms. So isotopes that are unstable, they are chosen. They are hit with the neutron, and that leads to split. That leads to the fission. That leads to the breakup. And during this process, lot of energy is released. This energy is then used for maybe creating a bomb blast, right? So we have atomic bombs. Or this energy is conventionally harnessed in a gradual way and used to generate electricity. It is used to basically create steam. The steam runs the turbine like that. Right, so this is the nuclear fission reaction. And I refer to a bomb also. If it is uncontrolled, it is atomic bomb. Clear? This is clear. And here we basically refer to some minerals like uranium, etc. Uranium, plutonium, all those things. Now comes nuclear fusion. There is a difference, and there is a very important difference. Here we primarily use the bomb also that is made by this we refer to this as hydrogen bomb. So it is basically dependent on hydrogen. It is something like what happens on the sun. So on sun, what is happening? There is hydrogen that is getting fused, and then it becomes helium, which is an inert gas. So because of the high temperature that is there is fusion of hydrogen elements or hydrogen atoms, molecules. They are merging together and forming helium. So this is fusion. It requires huge amount of energy. But here we are requiring hydrogen, and here we are requiring uranium. Now the benefit is hydrogen is easily available. We have water, we have sea all around. So it is easily available. So here we need an unstable isotope. So we have deuterium, as I told you earlier, H12, and tritium H13, atomic number 1, that means 1 proton and 2 neutrons, likewise deuterium. Okay, so these two fuse together, they merge, their nucleus reacts together and they merge, they become one. So for this to take place, lot of heat is required, excessive heat. Imagine the sun, right? So lot of heat. So it creates the state known as plasma. The electrons run away and it is just the nucleus and they merge. And this creates lot of energy, much more energy that is created by the fission. Right, so this is there. So it creates helium that is inert. Now again, one difference that you can see is the waste that is generated from uranium, radioactive waste, that is very, very bad. It is dangerous. But here what we are getting is helium, which is actually inert. Done. Now coming to the prospects. So we'll compare both the things together. So first question is, when we are looking at these technologies, we are, in this article, we are referring to developments in the fusion. So what is the feasibility? If we are looking at prospects, then how feasible is it to have this nuclear fission and nuclear fusion? So first of all, if we have to conduct a reaction, we need the availability of isotopes. So this is rare, uranium is rare, we are making so many efforts, so many difficulties are there for us to procure it, right? So this is a problem. We have thorium, which can be made available from the sand in Kerala, right? So that is there, but again it is not readily usable. Okay, so availability of isotope is a key difficult challenge with reference to the fission reaction. But when we look at fusion, we have the sea, we have water. So from water we can easily get hydrogen, and within that also it is relatively easy to get deuterium because we do not need much of the hydrogen. Very small amount can provide huge amount of energy, so very small amount is needed. So we can get deuterium, but tritium is a problem. So this is the one that is problem. So we need to merge these together, but we do not have tritium, so we have to find alternatives. So this is available in scarce amount, and that is the challenge. Okay, there is a proposal that moon may be having tritium in huge quantities, as because of the solar flares we are protected because of our atmosphere, but moon does not have. So moon surface will be having excess amount of tritium, and we can have mining activity taking place on moon. Right, just additional information. We'll come to that. We are looking at mining in Mars also, Elon Musk is saying, so that way. Okay, so this is it. Then comes the issue of energy. This provides a lot of energy, but the energy that is provided by fusion is much more. Imagine the energy that is coming from the sun, and it is the biggest source of energy that is available on Earth as well, right? And it provides energy to the entire solar system. So it is much more effective. Let's be till effective, because efficiency is a problem. Okay, then comes the issue of nuclear waste. This nuclear waste is very toxic. It is radioactive. If it is not treated well, then it may create some side effects, right? If the waste is not disposed, people have certain illnesses, cancer, etc. But with reference to nuclear fusion, we get helium, which is the second least, it's an inert gas. It is non-reactive, so it does no harm. And then comes the question of safety. What if the fission reaction takes place uncontrollably? We will have a nuclear disaster like the one that happened in Chernobyl in Russia, USSR, now it is in Ukraine. But with reference to nuclear fusion, we need excess amount of heat, which creates the plasma in which the fusion reaction takes place. So we need lot of energy. So when the source of energy goes away, when a disaster takes place, the source of energy will also go away. So how will the fusion take place? So this is one issue over here, right? So this is a safety, this is a good thing over here. So it will not lead to a meltdown. Now coming to the challenges. So if it is so good, what is the problem? Technology. It is very difficult. It is like making a sun on the earth, right? It is hard. It is not commercially viable. We do not have tritium at this moment, and whatever is developed till now, we have certain experiments also. We find that we are using lot more amount of energy as compared to what we are getting. So the heat that is being supplied, the energy that is being supplied to create a plasma and a fusion reaction, it is not providing adequate amount of energy. So let's say we are using 100x of energy, 100 units of energy, we are getting only 1 unit of energy as a result. So that is not very good. It's bad. Then concerns over misuse of technology. We are doing this, we are inculcating this. What if somebody makes atomic bomb? Somebody makes hydrogen bomb. Atomic bomb is this one, this is hydrogen bomb. Both based on the nuclear technology, but hydrogen bomb is very lethal and dangerous. It's much more powerful than the atomic bomb, right? So this is it. So hydrogen bomb is based on fusion. Okay. So this is there. And availability of tritium alternatives for having this reaction is a problem. Okay, so this is it. Now comes the natural question. We need to inculcate this. This may be a very good benefit, but then why not invest in renewables as such? This is a question. Why not invest in renewables? Or in other words, we can also say that what are the issues with renewables that we are looking at? Nuclear fusion. With renewables, for example, when we are having electricity based on sun or water also, tidal energy, etc., the problem is consistency. The problem is storage of electricity. Then you need batteries, then again e-waste. There are problems. This can provide a stable source of energy. And again, it is better than the conventional forms of energy. What are the conventional forms of energy? Your basic things, the routine things like thermal power based on the coal-based plants, etc. So they are polluting. This is non-polluting. So this is much more better. Only thing is commercial viability and concern over misuse of tech has actually not been mentioned. It is a point that I have only given. Now this is the text. I thought you will need a proper definition. You'll spend your time researching on it. So I have mentioned the text. Just take a screenshot, right? And we'll come back to the article over here. So now a development has taken place. And with reference to fusion energy, one, you need to know the technology. Other thing is for prelims, you need to know various initiatives that are taking place. So these are some things that are asked in the prelims. And which all countries are part of it, especially if India is part of it. Okay, so in a place, joint European tourists, there is a facility near Oxford in England, obviously, that they have been able to do an experiment on fusion energy. So there is some donut like a structure known as tokamak, right? So tokamak. So in this, a lot of energy was supplied and fusion was successfully done with the isotopes deuterium and tritium, right? These are isotopes of hydrogen. So they were heated to 10 times more than the center of the sun and the plasma was created. And in plasma what happens? The fusion takes place, right? So superconductor electromagnets were there which could keep the things in place so that the reaction takes place correctly. Okay. Now, so we have this JET facility. Then it is saying that this development will give a great boost to another initiative that is going on. It is known as ITER. So it will provide a major boost for the ITER, the larger and more advanced version of the JET. I can't find the ITER right now, the text. You can just write it in the comment section. Okay. So the countries that are participating, there are 7 countries. This includes China, European Union, India, Japan, South Korea, Russia and the US. So European Union, and that United Kingdoms is not part of European Union. And this is based in south of France. Right. So one is this ITER initiative, and which all countries? India is part of it. Again, something that you need to keep in mind. And other experiment that is going on is that China is trying to create an artificial sun. Right. So China is trying its own experiment to create an artificial sun. And why? What does it mean, artificial sun? Creating a situation where we have lot of temperature as 10 times hotter than the center of the sun. So creating that environment so that fusion energy can be created. I think you should be able to answer this question now. Okay, now quickly for prelims perspective. So there was this trekker who was going trekking, adventurous person. So he was near the Palghat Hills. There are hills known as Cherrad Hills. So where are Cherrad Hills located? They are located in the located at the rocky hill Malampuza near Kerala's Palghat. Right, so we have certain information for prelims. So he was trekking. So what is a normal thing? He fell into the crevice. This is in your NCERT. So he fell in a structure like this. This is Iceland, not Kerala. Right, so he fell over here. So this structure is known as crevice. It is a narrow opening or fissure, especially in a rock or a wall. Right, so he was having difficulties and he posted on Facebook, and then Army, NDRF, the CM of Kerala had requested, and he was evacuated. So again, the role of media and the various agencies are mentioned over here. Coastal vulnerability. So there is this organization which carries out coastal vulnerability assessment. Important for prelims and important for mains as well, because I found questions. Only thing was there was no reference of coastal disaster, otherwise I would have pitched the same question. I also expect a question on coastal vulnerability index. These days, how are the cyclones named? A question to that effect was asked. How does the NAVIC system function? What is the basis for this index? Such questions are being asked. So this is also something that you need to keep in mind. So this agency, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, has created the Coastal Vulnerability Index. This is based on the parameters like tidal range, wave height, coastal slope. So all these parameters it has done. And it is also helping create composite hazard zones. Now I'll tell you, there was a question, I refer to all the disaster management questions, and actually this is the reason that our DN is slightly late, quite late actually. So there was a question about landslides as to how can composite hazard zones be helpful in mitigating landslide related risk. And as an administrator, how would you create a suitable disaster management system? So this question was actually asked. Now from prelims perspective, you should know about the Coastal Vulnerability Index, its parameters, and the agency. So this agency is obviously it is about coastal safety, coastal vulnerability, disaster management, and it is coming under the Ministry of Earth Sciences and based out of Hyderabad. Normally these are in Delhi, but this is in Hyderabad. Okay, I'll give you this question and everything will be covered. So if you have to just attempt this question. Discuss India's vulnerability to coastal disasters. What are the parameters to consider vulnerability to coastal disasters? So here are the parameters, just list down that we have a coastal vulnerability index created by this, and these are the parameters. So that is the difference, when you actually prepare and write your answers beforehand, then you will not make points in the examination. So you will be more specific, more precise, and the examiner will have to give you that extra mark. And each extra mark, even half a mark, extra mark in 20 questions make a lot of difference. And I can assure you this about our initiatives that it is not 80%, it is 95%, even 100%, because normally my 2 months or 3 months of this thing covers the syllabus. But this is just the constraints over here. Okay. So what are the parameters to consider? As an administrator, how would you approach such a situation? Right, so these are the things, and I refer to the IGNOU for this. Right, so there was a chapter on coastal disasters, so I refer to the chapter. I found it on the IGNOU also. Yeah. Okay, first of all, what is India's vulnerability? How do you approach this? It's very simple. I need a blank area. Okay, this is the coastline of India, and please do mention Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweeps. So this is around 7,500 kilometers, right? So we have a huge coastline, and with the coastline, what happens? There may be a tsunami. Recently, a tsunami also took place, not with India, but somewhere else. In 2004, there was there. A lot of people had died because of this. So tsunami is there. Then with tsunami, there are also storm surges. Not as bad as tsunami, but these are, huge, fast wind is there, and it carries the water and it intrudes into the coast. So it's a matter of safety with the people over there. Okay, so storm surges are there, and then what all happens? What happens on the eastern side around November, December, and sometimes even in the summers? Cyclones. So these are also there. Then what else? We are having the fishermen community. Their safety also needs to be considered, the safety of the fishermen, and they play an important role in giving out advisories. Then likewise, we also have exclusive economic zones. We have mining activities going on. We have energy excavation is going on, exploration is going. So considering the safety of our assets in this region. Okay, so these are some natural disasters. Then what complicates is that most of the, these coastal cities The coastal cities are the ones that are more populated. They attract people. A lot of people are there. Density of people are much more. Imagine Bombay. Imagine any coastal city, right? So more number of people being there compounds the problem. More number of people are there, so it compounds the problem. And here again you need to mention that people from the vulnerable sections, imagine when a cyclone is coming, people who are living in proper brick houses, they will be safer as compared to people who are living in slums, who are living in temporary accommodations. They will be living in low-lying areas, so they will be the first ones who are affected by coastal floods or an event like this, coastal floods. Right, so these are certain things. So people aspect, please do mention that population density. Now, what are the parameters? You have the parameters. We have this agency which has created this, and based on this, we have this. Okay, so we also have sea level change because of climate change. That is also a risk. So, as an administrator, how would you approach a situation if there is a disaster situation in your place? What do you do with that? Or you are posted in a place where there is a high probability of a natural disaster like this, coastal disaster. What would you do? So typically there is a simple cycle. So there is this disaster management. So first thing is, the event that has taken place. You refer to the chart, you refer to the text over. Also you can take the screenshot. So let me just write disaster. That event has taken place, right? But what if you are in a place, you know that this place is more vulnerable, and how will you know it is more vulnerable? You will have to carry out assessment. You have to have a proactive approach to this, that this is there. You need to look at the community engagement. So community has to be prepared that, see, this is a problem, that messaging has to be there. In case this happens, you have to take these corrective measures. That is why we have the NDMA also, National Disaster Management Authority, and at the state level also. So we need to work on prevention. We need to work on preparedness. So not just the government, but also the community has to be prepared. And these days we have the benefits of satellite data. We have sensors that are located everywhere. So we get prior warning also. So we need to work on the early warning systems. Then the disaster takes place. Now the disaster response has to be quick, fast, right? Because that is the time when most lives can be saved. So that has to be done. So response has to be done. Then what relief has to be provided, that has to be done. And then comes build back better. Go Sendai framework. This is the UN framework for disaster management. So it says that first of all, we have to recover, then we have to go into the rehabilitation, right? So that those people who are affected, particularly the vulnerable section, they are brought back on their feet. But when we are doing all this, we need to build back better. That is it. So these are steps that you need to keep in mind, and this is kind of a combo question where a component of your case study is also included. Now coming to privatization. Now I didn't want to share this question, but this was good actually, so I have a question before you. And with reference to this budget also, there was a reference that our fiscal deficit target is at 6.9%. It can come down to 6.4% if the government is able to disinvest from the LIC. So here is a question before you. Critically examine the policy of disinvestment in India towards achieving public good. Right? So disinvestment government is doing, even the LIC also we have, and Maruti also they did. So what is it? Is it good? Is it bad? So when you're reading this article, might as well just write your answer only and get done with it for once and for all. Okay. Let me just explain what is disinvestment first of all. And disinvestment and strategic disinvestment. There are two key concepts over here. So let's presume, right? Let's make an assumption over here that government has 100% of equity or ownership of this company known as LIC. Right? I've said LIC. So LIC, the government has complete control. So what government can do is that, see, we can give a part, we want to raise money, we need money for certain things. So we can part with our share, some share of it, and we can sell it. Who will buy it? It could be private sector, it could be a company that is interested in the insurance industry. They can buy it, or it could be sold in the retail, or somebody who believes that this value will increase in the future, so they want to buy it. So the government sells a stake of theirs. So that is a disinvestment. Strategic disinvestment is when the government sells the company or its stake in such a way, not sells the company, it sells its stake in the company in such a way that the control over the company, LIC is being controlled and governed by the government. The control over the company is with the private hands. So they say that there is this feeling that, why should the government be in the business of economics? Kautilya Arthashastra disagreed with this, but why should the government control everything? Our job is governance, public service delivery. Let the private sector do, right? So maximum governance, minimum government. So this is their responsibility. So this is there. Private sector will use optimal utilization of resources will be there. They will have this competitive spirit, and they will perform better. Normally the PSUs are there, they are dependent on the government grants, they are not very profitable, they are not performing very well. So we have the example of Air India, we have the Oil India company, all these PSUs over here which are not performing very well. So give it to the private hands. They should be able to bring better management, better expertise, better hunger for making more profit, because that works on profit only. So that will be a much better approach as compared to what the PSUs are running. So that is strategic disinvestment. So we have two things. One is the government is selling to raise money, and in our context it is because we have a high fiscal deficit. That is, we are spending more than our revenue, so to compensate for that, right? This is there. So this for this purpose. Now read this line over here. Simply pursuing this path while utilizing such proceeds for loan write-offs or for providing subsidies or for revenue expenditure, that is not good. If you are getting this money should be used for creating capital assets which provides long-term returns, right? Whenever as individuals also think about it, when we take a loan, right, we don't normally, if we can afford it, we buy it for getting assets, building house or something like that, because it will provide a certain return, rather than spending on luxuries and other things that we don't do. So that is not considered prudent. So that is the same for the government also. Okay, so here is a fact. Here he says, let's come to the article, and through this we will cover this question. And please, one more thing, when this text on the computer itself is very small, but on the mobile it will be very, very tiny. So that's a problem. So try to do this on the laptop and have a pen and paper with you. Okay, so we have a high fiscal deficit, as I told you. And if we include the fiscal deficit of the state, because when we say fiscal deficit, we are talking about the center, but states also have a fiscal deficit. They are also spending more than what they earn. So combined figure is much more. It is at 12.7% of the GDP. Okay. And so this is there. So we are looking at the aspect of bridging the fiscal deficit over here. So by selling the stake in a company like LIC, there was a reference. So we will bridge the fiscal deficit. Now there is a consensus that privatization is the panacea, that it will solve everything. We give it in the private hands and things will improve. But we find, not just in India, but in other parts of the world as well, that when these companies are given into the private hands, we do not see significant improvement in their performance. So we do not have the evidence that if we give it to the private hands, it will be run in a better way, right? So this is what it is saying. And it says that basic reason for the PSUs to not do well is because of the government apathy. Now, for example, I'll tell you this Oil India company and Oil India Limited, Hindustan Petroleum. Now, they have to keep the petrol prices low. At the earlier time, now everything is systems have changed. But let's say they are buying crude at $110 per barrel, but they have to keep the prices of the crude less. So rather than the government providing the subsidy to the company, the PSUs were subsidizing the cost to the retailer. So it was the PSU that was being burdened. Sometimes the government says that, see, you have to operate in this area which is not profitable, because they have a certain strategic aspect to it. So therefore, thereby it doesn't function well. Likewise with the Air India also, they say that certain seats have to be reserved. So even if it is empty, it has to function. It has to be reserved for certain people, MPs, etc. So it doesn't perform well. Okay, so this is it. So for this purpose, that it will improve efficiency, we had a disinvestment commission. We have a department of disinvestment. And I'll come to a more recent one. We have an agency known as DIPAM. Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. So we have this agency. It is under which ministry and who leads it? This is your task for prelims. Okay, so do it. Comment in the this thing also, our video, end of the video. Okay, so this is it. So we have a commission for this purpose. Now this agency, whichever agency that was doing, which is listed over here, their task was to sell the stake in the PSU, right? So disinvestment. Now what we are seeing is that the companies are not able to, the agencies that are responsible for disinvestment, they are not able to get the right value. They estimate, in fiscal year 2011, they estimated some 40,000 crores, but instead they got 50% of this, 22,846. Likewise, in fiscal year 2020, a more recent figure also, the target was 1 lakh crore, but the government got 50,000 crores. So we are not able to get the valuation also. So the targets also, it is not able to bridge the fiscal deficit. Okay. So this is a concern over here. Then the other thing is that the PSUs help perform a social function. I'll give you a very simple example that you guys also see. So, with reference to banks, there are this nationalization of banks took place. And I think even today also, even though there is a regulation that the private sector banks, whosoever gets the license from the RBI, if they have a branch in the city, so at least 2 branches have to be in the rural or the backward areas. But that is actually not done. It is not followed because it is not profitable. But you will find a branch of the State Bank of India very easily in the remote corners. Why? This is a government ownership and the government has instructed. So there is a social consequence. The private sector does not do it. That is a problem. So social consequence. Likewise, we can look at connectivity, when this privatization of this mobile companies also took place. So we found that BSNL was available even in militant infested area. Nobody wants to construct the towers over there, but they were operating. So in backward areas also, but we cannot find, although bad connectivity, but we cannot find the private sector companies because not profitable. So there is a social consequence to it also. Then we have these several companies, PSUs that are established in the more backward areas. Why? Because it wants to create jobs, inclusive jobs in different parts of the country and lead to development of those inferior areas. So that is the idea. So there is a social consequence. So with privatization, this will be compromised. Right? Now, it may also lead to creation of monopolies like we see in the case of tolls, etc. So when this monopolization takes place, we find the tariffs will increase for whatever service you take. Tariffs will increase and that will lead to inflation. And furthermore, giving these companies to the private sector, right? If you had this company, let's say there was private sector also, one single company, but the PSU provides things at a lower cost, then the private sector would be compelled to reduce the cost. But here the strategic control will be removed. It will be affected. So this is a problem, right? So let me quickly wrap up. So you can refer to the policy of disinvestment in your own words. We have a lot of content over here. Right? You can refer to the initiatives that the government has taken, like Department of Disinvestment and then subsequently the DIPAM. Then you can write down the objectives over here. right? So government wants to focus on governance. It will lead to job creation and inclusive growth, that the private sector will operate the companies in a better way, so that will lead to more growth, prosperity, and as a result of this, more jobs will be created. But is it really happening? That is what this line says: critically examine. Now, what can be done? So we have example where China specifically have performed very well. China, we have an example of China and Singapore. So what we find is that we all know PSUs are controlled and governed by the government. So that is there, given. So here what they are done is that undue influence of the government. For example, the government says that our fiscal deficit is very high, so why don't you give us dividends? So undue amount of dividends are there. In fact, I myself have some PSUs because they provide a lot of dividends. I don't sell it. A private company will not give so much dividends. So they are doing this. So it is actually the problem with the government. So what they are doing is that there is a holding company that works independently, although with the government, but it functions independently, prioritizes efficiency, effectiveness, and market values. So this holding company keeps a control over the PSU. Even though part of the government, it is functioning independently, it is corporatized. So this is there. Likewise, we see with reference to Singapore as well. So this is one side of it. I'll tell you one more thing. So their PSUs are performing very well. Other thing that we see with reference to the Chinese PSU. China has been creating these PSUs, and what they are doing is they are buying companies of USA, etc. So especially of high technological value. So they are acquiring technology in that sense, which has actually compelled the US to consider their policies with reference to mergers and acquisition. And this is a thing actually. So this is how China has been, this technology then they get and then they give it to their private sector, Chinese private sector. That is also there. Right. So now again, I think you should be able to write your own answer within the word limit. And this is all you will need for this topic. India's mRNA vaccine likely by April. Right. So that is a different thing. What we are concerned about is mRNA, and we don't have it as yet. So we referred to the vaccines earlier, Pfizer, Moderna. These were based on the mRNA vaccine technology, and this I personally believe that has not been asked as yet. I believe that mRNA vaccine is a very, very important concept for science and tech, and it will come. It should come. Okay. Before going forward with this thing, I think I'll just tell you what all things are with the concept of mRNA and then come back here. Now with reference to this vaccination, I have 2-3 videos. So one is on Novavax and other one is on Corbevax. This is the one that I made earlier. So this Corbevax video obviously explains the technology, but at the end of the video, right, I have compared the different types of vaccine technologies. And this also includes the mRNA type of vaccine. So very briefly, I have explained the various vaccine types. So that may be helpful for you. And all my videos are just 10-12 minutes types. Okay. Briefly explain the functioning of the mRNA vaccine. What are its pros and cons? And I'm going to do briefly only because I think we have taken a lot of time. Yeah. So conventionally speaking, right, I don't want to confuse you with this diagram. So conventionally speaking, we have been injecting the vaccines that are there. They are basically either we put a pathogen, right? We put a weakened virus, we put a dead virus. Some form or the other, we are actually injecting a pathogen over here. Right, so this is a problem. In mRNA vaccine, what we do is, for example, in the case of SARS-CoV, what we do is, rather than injecting the vaccine, injecting the virus or injecting a part of the virus as is done in the Covishield, right? So we take the spike protein and inject it. So rather than doing this, because here again we are using a pathogen and that pathogen has to be treated, filtered and then put into the human body. So rather than this, we find that, okay, fine, there is a genetic code to it. There is a DNA. Now this virus is actually RNA based. So we take the RNA strand, and when we refer to the DNA and the RNA, there is basically a sequence, right? The proteins are there, there is a code. So we identify that sequence. We identify the sequence and we make certain changes to it. We make certain modifications to it. So we do this, and based on this, we create the mRNA sequence. So, you know, in biology, what is there? The cells communicate. Cells communicate by means of mRNA. This M stands for messenger. Messenger RNA sequence. So this gives instructions, this communicates with the cells and gives them that idea as to what to do. So this mRNA sequence is prepared. Now this is put in a coat. This is put in a lipid coating in a fatty substance. It is put and then it is injected. And what does this do? It tells the human body, rather than putting the virus itself, it tells the human body that you have to prepare spike proteins, right? So spike protein is created by the human body itself. So no pathogen is sent over here, right? So no pathogen is sent over here. So it is safer in that regard. So it is put over here, and the spike protein is created, and automatically the human body responds to it. So this is the mRNA type of vaccine. Now, what are the benefits? First of all, it is faster. So you see all these vaccinations coming so quickly and so fast because we have gotten advanced in the genetic technology. We know the sequence. Once the virus has come, we know the sequence. We can identify the RNA sequence. We can filter that and create the mRNA very easily. So we can do that and inject. Now in this process, the design and development stage, then the regulatory phase. So all of this can be condensed because of this. So that is the benefit. So this can be done. Now there are so many variants coming here and there. So some changes, Omicron is there, Delta variant is there. So as we can get the RNA sequence very quickly, once we have the code, we can quickly make the modifications, put it through the system and then inject it. Put it in the marketplace and get it injected. So it is like a plug and play model. Changes are there, made quickly, like it is in the plug, you want something, you put it in the plug, switch it on, remove it. So it's like a plug and play. Moment a change has come, you can bring about a change very rapidly. So it is ideal for new variants. In fact, many other diseases for which we do not have a vaccination, we can develop it by means of mRNA. So it can be a game changer, especially with reference to vaccinations and finding finding vaccinations for diseases like dengue, malaria, etc. And this is safer because in the design and development stage for any other vaccine, you are using a weakened vaccine, you are using the weakened virus, dead virus, recombinant virus, where we take a part and put it in the body. So all of this, you are dealing with pathogens, but here you are not dealing with pathogens. The thing is being manufactured within the body, not in the factories. So it is safer. Now what is the problem then? There is always a catch. The mRNA sequence is very, very weak and fragile, right? That is why we have this Covishield also. They didn't use the mRNA. It is not that anybody, others could have also done it. There was no big deal. But the problem is when you have to take it to long distances, then it makes a problem. So we need a more hardy virus. This has to be stored at a very cold temperature. So from the conception stage to injection into the human body, it has to be very, very cold. Otherwise, it will not be effective. So that is a problem. And therefore, we had to look at the alternatives like, for example, your Covishield, etc. Right? So this is a challenge over here. So it has to be kept in sub-zero temperatures. Right. This is a text, you can take a screenshot, and now let's come back. I can't recall actually 1 or 2 points. So yeah, I think we'll do it through the article and we'll be through. So there is this company known as Genova Biopharmaceuticals. So they are in the phase of concluding their mRNA vaccine. They are making their own. Up till now, we have the vaccines that were created by US based company like Moderna and Pfizer. Okay, so they are having this clinical trials at the moment, and this had been funded. It got certain funding from the Department of Biotechnology. It is under which ministry, by the way? Right, so Department of Biotechnology, this department has provided them funding. Okay, now they are having a problem with this is that since most of the people are already vaccinated, they say that about 95% of the population already have been vaccinated, adult population, and about 70 to 90% have been exposed to the virus from the serological survey we know. So they were not finding many people. But nevertheless, this vaccine is being developed. Right, so these are the benefits of this mRNA type of vaccine. The only problem is with reference to the storage conditions and putting it to the end person over here. Right, so these are the points you can see. You can read the text. You can have the text over here also. So all of this is referred to. These are all government sources, by the way. Suicides due to job loss highest in 2020. Two things. We have some data over here. 16,000 people committed suicide due to bankruptcy or indebtedness. We have the name of a scheme which the government has stated in reply to this. Now I have two things. Why is this taking place? And pandemic is not the alone problem over here. So why? And what needs to be done? What can be done in this regard? So these are the two things, and in fact my first video on this channel is based on unemployment in the country and the structural problems within the economy. All you have to do is add pandemic to it. So all the problems with the Indian economy are listed. That was in 2018, I think. So that was the time when I did this. So we had 2-3 videos only back then. So the first video and everything is covered over there, and I've referred to the economic survey, the earlier one. Okay, now as reply to that the government is saying that we have the scheme known as Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, right? So this is, you need to know. So it says that the idea is incentivize employers for creation of new jobs along with social security benefits. And I'll literally put it this way: this is for formalization of the economy. So you remember formalization, that the employees that are in the company, they are provided social security benefit, at least one social security benefit, that is known as a company that is operating in the formal sector. And for this, what incentive they are providing? When an employee is working, so they are provided they have to make certain contribution to the provident fund. Part of it comes from the employee's own contribution, so automatically it is deducted, and part of it is from the employer, so EPFO. So that is done. So for people who are earning less than 15,000, for those people, the government has subsidized, the center has subsidized the EPFO contribution. So that is Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana. Quad ministers set to meet in Australia. Right, the meeting take place. So then we will discuss this entire thing. So all we know that it is in Australia over here. And I think this will help you. This question will help you a bit more. Quadrilateral security dialogue is transforming itself into a trade bloc from military alliance in present times. So this question was asked. Discuss. Let me explain the context. China. Right, imagine the South China Sea region, East China Sea. So here we have Japan on the north. Here we have southeast. So here we have South China, Asian countries. Close to Indonesia, we have to the south. We have Australia. We have Japan. We have USA to the east, and we have India over here. So Quad is a grouping of these 4 countries, and the way they are located, all these countries have a problem with China. So typically they refer to, earlier there was a military exercise that used to take place between India, USA. Then it became India, USA, Japan, and it came to be known as Malabar exercises. Then Australia also came, Australia, Japan, bye. Ultimately, they formed, there was a military exercise that used to take place, and against which country, it's quite evident if you just look at the geography. So this came to be known as Quad. Now what we are seeing in the present times, and what are they talking about? They say that we want to work together, and they are saying that we are concerned about China's insistence that the entire sea, South China Sea, belongs to China. So they always have maps, right? And with India also they have a map that says entire Jammu and Kashmir and this your Arunachal Pradesh is part of there. So they have something known as 9-dash line. So they say that this entire sea is ours, and we have claim to this. So that intrudes into the rights of the Asian countries. So they went to the court also, the international court known as Permanent Court of Arbitration. So they went to it. Their PCA declared in favor of the Asian countries who had complained against China. China didn't agree to this thing, and the status quo is there. The problem here is that it affects the right to navigation. The important sea lanes of communication passes through this route, which affects India, Australia, USA, all these countries over here. So they are concerned about this. So they are asking for the freedom of navigation. And in fact, these are international seas, and nobody can, even if it is an exclusive economic zone, you cannot stop the access to navigation. And if China is so assertive, they can constrict the trade that is taking place and economic activities. Okay. So that is how the Quad actually came into existence, and it is targeted against China, even if it is not, they don't say it openly, but it's evident. Okay. Now what we see is that we find the Quad members working on various other aspects and not just military aspects. So they are working on, first is they are talking about the freedom of navigation. They are talking about compliance with the international rules and laws, particularly the UNCLOS. UNCLOS defines the laws with reference to the sea. So since these are international matters, so there is an agency known as UNCLOS. Likewise, compliance to the ruling that was given by the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So they want to create a rule-based international order, which the China has not been accepting. That's given. Okay, so that is what they are saying. Rule of law, freedom of navigation and overflight, peaceful resolution of disputes. So it's evident what they are saying. But it is not targeted at China. This is what the US says and all the other countries there. Okay, so this is what we have. So they are saying it is at much more. We are looking at Indo-Pacific region. We are looking at connectivity initiative. We are looking at vaccination. We are looking at 5G technology. We are looking at semiconductors, cooperation in COVID-19 situation. So they are forming an alliance. And again, somewhere it seems it is at counter to China, which is investing in these countries. Right? So this is it actually in brief. Now China has a concern with this, and I didn't even read this article, and I knew that Cold War mindset, the statement has come from China. So it is a Cold War mindset where two blocks are pitted against each other. China on one hand and a US-led initiative on the other. Right? Like NATO and Warsaw Pact. You don't have to write this, please. Okay, so this is it. Yeah. So this concludes our daily news analysis. So thank you for streaming into IS Primers with me, Shubhashish, and please do share your answers. I've gotten about 6 answers till now, so you can share it, and there is a lot of improvement. I can assure you that. Bye bye.